Did you spring ahead? I'm Charlie Sykes. Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight in the week that was presidential debates for both the Democrats and the Republicans. UW-Madison officially names Greg Gard its men's basketball coach. A Wisconsin cheese wins a world championship, and we get ready for March Madness. But we start with the campaign. An ugly campaign season gets even uglier. Not just the presidential race or the race for Milwaukee mayor. Now it is the state Supreme Court. Earlier in the week, State Supreme Court Justice Rebecca Bradley apologized after a column she wrote 24 years ago as a college student surfaced. In the column, she referred to gays as queers and degenerates. She said she was now embarrassed and sorry for the remarks. But on Thursday, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel fired another shot with a headline story about what it called an extramarital affair that took place a decade ago. That story drew a strong response from Bradley's ex-husband, a former Milwaukee police detective named Gordon Bradley, who called the headline in the story false as well as malicious and despicable. In a statement, Gordon Bradley said, "I am outraged by the story in the Journal-Sentinel accusing my former wife of having an extramarital affair. Not only is their headline a lie, they knew it before they printed it. I told their reporter, Patrick Marley, that we were separated at the time of the relationship when he emailed me about it yesterday. They did not even bother to print my quote. Rebecca is truly a kind, gracious, and generous person," he wrote. "We remain close personal friends. Our marriage just did not work out, but we still very much love and respect one another. That's why it pains me to see the state's largest newspaper determined to assassinate her character." Now, joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Mikel Holt, who makes his return, former State Representative Michelle Litjens, defense attorney Dan Adams, and the managing editor of RightWisconsin.com, Collin Roth. So how much damage does this do to Rebecca Bradley?
Well, it was a rough week. There's no getting around that. But I think what you saw was she apologized for those columns. She apologized unequivocally. She said she was embarrassed. And what we're seeing are the politics of personal destruction. We see somebody who isn't allowed to change their mind, somebody who isn't allowed to grow up, who was the old cliche, when I was young and stupid, I was young and stupid. But what we see here is she isn't allowed to be who she is today, and that's an unfair standard.
Okay, Dan Adams.
Well, it's tough. I predicted months ago that this was going to be an unfortunately terrible race, that no one's going to be focusing on the merits of the candidates. We're going to be talking about some issue. I don't care whether a judge, whether they had an affair or what they said in college. I want to know what how they'll address litigants in court and the facts to the law in front of them. What I do think there should be a check on is the vetting process of her, and why didn't Scott Walker's team go back and actually do a proper vetting?
How relevant is it what somebody wrote 24 years ago, particularly if they've apologized?
Again, I care about what she's going to do now, but I do think that because she has not had a very long track record, she was only on the Court of Appeals for 5 months before being elevated, they're looking for something to be a window into her mindset.
I think it is fascinating, by the way, that the media is more interested in what she wrote 24 years ago than what her opponent, Joanne Kloppenburg, has done as a judge 24 months ago. But Michelle Litjens, let's talk about this, because I had Rebecca Bradley on my show on Friday, and we were talking about the double standard for conservative women, and the fact that, this extramarital affair that the paper went with, even though her husband said, no, we were separated, the marriage was over, it was not that at all. And the fact that I think most people would refer to the affair as dating, and yet this is a banner story for Rebecca Bradley.
I don't even think the newspaper would have considered printing this story if it was about a man. They never even would have considered it. But they are obviously going after her character. There is nothing else they can do. They do not want her on the Supreme Court. The liberals, especially in the media, they hate conservative women. They detest them, and they do not want to see them be successful at all. So they are going to do whatever they can to defame her.
Okay, Mikel Holt.
Well, it was interesting. I think on your show she said that the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel is not a legitimate paper because they attacked her. I think that's going too far. I think conservative talk radio is doing a very effective job in twisting this whole thing around, making her the victim, and not even raising a question about, because...
about what?
Well, what I'm saying, when Clinton did it, you were all on him. Are you having an affair? Is it adultery if you're separated? Isn't it adultery?
Is that the standard? Okay, I want to know whether that's I want to know whether that's the standard, and why. By the way, you want to talk about a double standard here? Did the editors of the Journal Sentinel and other media handle the Bo Ryan story the same way they handled Rebecca Bradley? Because as I recall, they knew about Bo Ryan, but they did not write about that until Deadspin broke the story.
I'm not saying I'm not saying any media is unbiased. All media is biased. They have their own agenda. I'm like, Dan, I don't think this should be the defining issue.
Okay.
You know,
see,
but
here's the point here is I think this is an important Supreme Court election. There is a lot at stake, and I do think that there is an obvious attempt to change the subject of this, because I think that, quite frankly, if people vote on a tough-on-crime judge versus a soft-on-crime judge, I think that the conservative wins. I think that if there's a referendum on whether we want to be a society of laws or a society that is governed by activist judges, I think the conservative wins. So you have the media and the left doing everything possible to make this election about something other than what is actually on the ballot. Now, I think the 24-year-old Collins, I do think there's a statute of limitations, and I think she handled that as well as she could have by really apologizing, not attempting to rationalize, not attempting. But I do think the story about the extramarital affair was a low blow. And I agree with Michelle Litjens, this would not have been written about a guy. This was, you know, an incredible reach. You basically had a marriage that was over. They were dating. There was no ethical issue whatsoever. The husband had told them that. They chose not to quote him. I think what you have here is a newspaper that is so deeply invested in pushing its agenda, they crossed the line. And I got to tell you something. I think that she was probably hurt by the columns on the gays, but I think there's going to be a backlash among conservatives. There's going to be a backlash to the hit job that took place on Friday.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree. This is going to anger a lot of conservatives and hopefully get them engaged in this election. And I think this is in some ways very akin to the Prosser smear in 2011.
Yeah. So what is your glass half full this week? What is your glass half empty? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt, you are first.
Well, my glass is half full because presidential candidate Bernie Sanders said if elected, he would not only address the problem of racial profiling, but would end institutional racism. My glass is half empty because you can't legislate racism. The sad fact is the racially motivated murder of 3 minorities by Dan Pop last week is proof positive that bigotry is alive and well, and it'll be around until Judgment Day.
Michelle Litjens.
My glass is half full because science has cured blindness in 12 infants with adult stem cells. It's half empty because no one's talking about this achievement because adult stem cells were used and not the politically correct embryonic stem cells.
Dan Adams.
Well, my glass is half full because Milwaukee County Executive candidate Chris Larson is finally being forced to explain what he'd actually do if elected to that office. My glass is half empty because Larson's agenda is scary. He would raise our already high property tax. He would also seek to raise our sales tax, and he would allow the Milwaukee County Board to call all the shots. Sounds like a complete return to the Tom Ament days.
Collin Roth.
My glass is half full because a new study found that school choice can decrease the likelihood of a student committing a crime. It's half empty because many in the Milwaukee status quo remain committed opponents to school choice and education reform.
Well, my glass is half empty because Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett has launched a nasty personal attack against challenger Bob Donovan. It's full because Barrett's tactics suggest that he doesn't want to run on either his record or any substantive issue, which is revealing. Our Sunday Insight Countdown shows that we are just 2 days away from the next big primaries. Voters go to the polls in the important states of Florida and Ohio, as well as Illinois, Missouri, and North Carolina. We are 9 days away from primaries in Arizona and Utah, and the Wisconsin presidential primary is in just 23 days. We'll be right back. Hillary Clinton lost the state of Michigan last week, but continues to extend her delegate lead. And on the Republican side, Donald Trump continues to lead his rivals. On Tuesday, 2 of those candidates, Marco Rubio of Florida and John Kasich of Ohio, face must-win primaries in their own home states. At the same time, there's a growing push, especially among conservatives in the party, to rally around Texas Senator Ted Cruz. And there's growing talk about the possibility the nomination fight could extend all the way to the convention this summer in Cleveland. So what do you think is going to happen here? Now, you're a Rubio backer, but obviously it's not happening. It's not happening for your guy.
No, it's probably not happening. I also agree, though. I do think that this fight is going to go all the way to the convention, and it's not going to be a pretty one because the people out there supporting Trump are not going to cross over and support Cruz. But the thought that these candidates are out there talking about kind of coalescing and getting behind one candidate, that really is the only way to stop Donald Trump from getting to that.
Was fascinating on Friday where you had the Rubio campaign say it's okay for for people in Ohio to support Kasich.
Yeah.
You had Cruz pulling out of Florida. So you have the strategic voting going on here. But by the time it gets here, there's not going to be all of these candidates. Now, again, where are Rubio voters going to go in the state of Wisconsin? Are they going to be able to swallow Ted Cruz?
Perhaps. I mean, if you want to stop Donald Trump, you're going to have to. I'm trying to decide yet who I'm going to vote for because I still want to check off the Rubio box.
There's no alternative for you.
You would vote for Rubio if it meant that Donald Trump could win in Wisconsin?
Right. But okay, fine. Maybe I have to pull the Cruz lever.
Okay, could you explain to her why that has to happen?
I understand.
This is not a tough call.
I understand.
This is not a tough call.
It's arithmetic.
Republicans need to rally around Ted Cruz and fast. And I think when you think about the two camps of what could happen in Cleveland, if it's Donald Trump, we know a lot of Cruz or Rubio supporters would not vote. We know if it's Marco Rubio, a lot of Trump supporters would not vote. Cruz might be able to bridge the gap between those parties.
Okay, what do y'all like Cruz?
Yeah.
But he's a constitutional.
That's exactly right.
Hillary Clinton. I would be glad for Cruz or for Trump to make it, because then you're going to have Hillary as president.
Okay, well, that may be.
Rubio's the only one that could beat Hillary.
Yeah, well, what happened to Hillary in Michigan, and does that suggest she's going to have a problem in some of these upper Midwest states, including Wisconsin?
It does.
Yes, okay.
It's
so
terrible. It was terrible news. I mean, she essentially tied. It was a statistical tie, more or less. But it showed that, especially when there's fire on the Republican side and you don't have those moderate voters who may, in an open primary, vote on the Democratic side, that Bernie Sanders, among white liberals, still has a lot of steam behind him.
So on April 5th, is that race still going to be hanging fire?
Unfortunately,
And I'm going to vote for Bernie Sanders.
Whoa, you are going to vote for Bernie Sanders. Why are you voting for Bernie Sanders?
Because I want to see this whole system destroyed from the top down so we can start over.
Okay, well, that'd be the way to start. You may not want to hear it, but we'll tell you anyway. Let's hand out some unsolicited advice. Michael Holt, you're first.
And mine is to Hillary. Bernie Sanders won Michigan because more voters under 30 showed up than her older support base. If nothing else, Sanders' victory implies younger voters aren't buying into the status quo.
Michelle.
Well, to Chris Abele, stop trying to be more liberal than Chris Larson, because he already has the radical left locked down. If you want to win, you're going to need to court some of the voters that Larson can't, and that would be conservatives.
Yeah, good luck with that. Dan Adams.
Okay, this is for Mikel. Hey, Bernie Sanders fans. There's a flip side to the Scandinavian socialist fantasy you're envisioning, and it's called Venezuela. Take my advice and take a look at that country's mess before advocating for its implementation here.
Collin Roth.
My advice is for Republicans: rally around Ted Cruz if you want to stop Donald Trump.
Okay, so my advice is, if you're a Republican voter in Florida, please vote for Marco Rubio. If you live in Ohio, please vote for John Kasich. If you're in Illinois or any other state voting on Tuesday, please vote for Ted Cruz. Donald Trump is not inevitable if the majority of Republicans do the right thing and don't lose their minds. Next on Sunday Insight, what should be done to stop the rash of bomb threats at area high schools? Bomb threats shut down a local high school for 3 days last week. Although there was no evidence that the threat was real, school officials took no chances. West Allis Central High School was closed for 3 days after 3 different bomb threats. As the weather warms up, the question becomes, how should schools handle those threats? Now, arrests were made. They arrested a 16-year-old for 2 of those threats. But what should schools do, and what should the consequences be, Dan Adams?
Stop listening to the lawyers for the school district, and stop taking the kids out of the classroom.
Really?
You can't shut down a school.
You think it's the lawyers who are saying this?
Oh, absolutely. Making it a big deal. And what's the offender, the kid, think? Oh, look what I just did.
Yeah.
And what do other kids who are maybe down those lines of delinquency think?
You want to be the guy to explain to the parents why, even though you have a bomb threat, you're having the kids come in?
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Figure out who it is. Keep them accountable. Don't create a situation where copycats come out and do this. And we know from West Allis there was a copycat involved.
Mom?
If I was that parent, if I found out there was a bomb threat at a school and they didn't close that school down and they sent my daughter or my son to school that day, I would be one ticked off parent they didn't want to deal with. But
Michael Holt? I think one of the biggest problems is, and I normally don't believe it when these judges say, I want to make an example of somebody, but in this case, you really need to make examples. And part of the problem is, as I understand it, if the kid is 16 or below, he's going to get a year in a youth center, and if he's 17, he'll get a maximum of 2 years. They should give him 10 years.
Oh, come on.
They should publicize his name. They should put him out front. They should make an example of him that the teachers can take back to the classroom and say, you're getting 5 years in prison.
Yeah. Well,
with Bubba.
I thought in Bernie Sanders' socialist paradise they would all get jobs, though. So this wouldn't
They'll
happen.
get a job.
Yeah,
They'll be
Bubba's. Collin Roth.
Well, yeah, I also thought it was ironic that these threats happened on, I think, the 3 nicest days of the year that we've had so far. But yeah, there needs to be some sort of example made of a student who does this, because there will be copycats. They know it's effective, and they need to know there's serious consequences.
Well, we say this every single time, and I was actually trying to figure out what has happened in the past, because everybody always says there should be, somebody should be made an example of, and yet I don't know that anyone's actually had an example made of it, have they?
No, but this kid should also, while he's in jail, in his orange jumpsuit, have to go around and talk to every high school and say, this is what happens to you when you do something so stupid.
Yeah, but I don't want to listen to that idiot.
No, but the kids need to hear the idiot.
Well, what about the proposals that say, you know what, you could create peer pressure for every day that is canceled, every day of school that is canceled because of a bomb threat, you add a day on, you have to come in on Saturday, you attack a day on at the end of the year. Would that be effective?
No,
at least in taking away the cool part?
It certainly, I mean, no one would be bragging about doing this at school, certainly, right? They'd all be upset with that other student. I do think you just need some serious consequences.
Deterrence theory doesn't work with a 16-year-old trying to, it just just doesn't work. They're not thinking about
peer pressure, but that would turn the peer pressure. I have mixed feelings about that, because I don't like the idea of punishing the 99.9% of innocent students for the one jackass student. But you're still basically saying ignore it, take the chances.
Not ignore it. Find out whether it's legitimate. If there is a legitimate
How do you know whether it's legitimate?
Most of this is all garbage. I mean,
well, of course. Yeah, but that of course is the dilemma, because the first time somebody ignores a threat and something bad happens, they'd never be able to explain it. You know that. Come on. That's why.
My grandson attended the game on Thursday.
Yeah.
That's scary. I mean, I didn't know until afterwards, but he was at that game. What if it was a real bomb?
Yeah. Well, and also because we are living in dangerous times, and there are real threats out there. I think they have to take them seriously, but I do agree you have to make examples. So what is it you don't get? Let's go around the table, and Mikel Holt, you're first.
Well, what I don't get is how the city Charlie calls the liberal empire, is that what you call it?
No, People's Republic.
People's Republic of Madison can be named the 10th most racist city in America. I thought liberals loved black people. Guess I was wrong again.
Yes, you were. Michelle Litjens.
Charlie, I don't get why we still have daylight savings time.
We like Dan Adams.
What's with the anti-trade rhetoric of Bernie and Trump? Listen, Flint, Michigan was a disaster before NAFTA. Trade's been proven to be the best prescription to fight poverty in the history of the world.
Collin Roth.
What I don't get is how Justice Rebecca Bradley's college-age views on abortion are somehow news, but Russ Feingold's endorsement of a right to infanticide on the Senate floor is not.
Somewhat ironic. What I don't get is how the campaign manager for a presidential candidate can assault a young female reporter and still keep his job. What? Oh, it was Donald Trump's campaign manager? Okay, I get it now. Next on Sunday Inside, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. But first, here's your morning news update. It's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Mikel Holt, you are first again.
Loser, poor folks who naively believe county executive candidate Chris Larson cares about them. The first thing he would do if elected is raise the regressive sales tax. That's called sticking it to the poor. My winner, a new study, as Collin said, reveals students who attend private schools under the choice program are significantly less likely to commit crimes as teens or adults. I guess God in the classroom isn't such a bad idea.
Michelle Litjens.
I agree with your winner. But my winner is Nancy Reagan. President Reagan said he wondered how he lived before he met Nancy. She was smart, classy, and adored her husband. She taught us to just say no, and that even couples in love have to deal with real issues like Alzheimer's. My loser is the Journal-Sentinel. For lowering their news standards to tabloid status, they ruined what little credibility they had left.
Dan Adams.
Well, my winner is Judge Joanne Kloppenberg. She unexpectedly scored a tie in February's Supreme Court primary. After this week, she is in prime position to win the seat in April. My loser is Justice Rebecca Bradley. Fair or unfair, this week's unrelenting onslaught of negative media has caused her the worst week that I can remember a politician suffering in Wisconsin ever, at least in my lifetime.
Collin Roth.
My winner this week is Ted Cruz, who now has the best chance to solidify the anti-Trump vote. Cruz has proven to be a dogged and strong campaigner, and he's got the best shot to beat Trump. My loser this week is the Donald Trump campaign, who roughed up a conservative reporter asking Trump a tough question. They then called the reporter a liar and denied the incident. Gross.
Well, Wisconsin cheese is my winner, which won a national championship this week. Now, we may take this for granted, but we are the cheese capital of the world, which is pretty cool. Loser, the Wounded Warrior Project, which turned out to be a massive scam that spent as much as half of all of its money on overhead, including millions of dollars on parties, booze, candy, and junkets, instead of on wounded heroes. There's a special place in hell for whoever is responsible for that. Thanks for joining us and joining my radio show Monday morning on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great week.